for the creation and growth of citizen media within a new web platform. It also addressing one of the main issues in regarding to giving people the opportunity to express themselves, an issue of free speech. First of all, we understand the first key component is a mobile device. When I'm talking about a mobile device, I'm talking about a cell phone that's feature-rich. It has a camera, digital camera, a camcorder, and it also has, most importantly, a broadband connection, such as a 3G network. The second component is an online web portion. This is the web platform which would collect all the key media files, the video, the images, the audio recordings, which have been anonymously submitted by people using their mobile devices, which would be running the mobile application, MobileVoices application. My inspiration for having come to this particular project has been the fact that I actually personally it's my own personal experiences that have led me to this project. I grew up and I was raised in Africa. I was born in a small country called Eritrea. Eritrea fought for 30 years so that our voices could be heard. We fought against our much larger neighbor Ethiopia. And there are brave men and women who, very much like my uncle Yonatan Kelib and so many other family members, who gave their lives so that I could be here today to let you know where Eritrea is. The very fact that this nation was founded on their right to expression, their right to be who they were, against all obstacles, inspired me to be here. I left Eritrea 18 years ago, and 3.5 years ago I went back to do a documentary about the brave men and women who actually fought in this war, particularly the women, because 30% of the rebel group consisted of women, and so I wanted to understand how this affected society and its equality between the sexes. And out of the brave men and women that I interviewed, there were 3 that really amazed me, because these 3 women were afraid to actually tell me their stories. They weren't afraid to actually tell me their stories, but they were afraid for it to be recorded and broadcasted. So I couldn't understand it. One was a 15-year veteran who fought every day, faced death every day in the desert for 15 years, but she was afraid to tell me her own personal story because she wasn't afraid for her own life, but her 3 kids. Her husband was martyred on the battlefield, so she was afraid that the government would do something, some sort of retribution would be taken out against her children or her, so she would be unable to take care of her kids. And then the other thing that inspired me are all these names that appear behind you. Each one is a journalist or a citizen that is currently in prison as of today. And these brave men and women basically risk their lives to express their view. And so when you think about it, as you see it today, there are more journalists that are going to prison than ever before, especially within the continent of Africa. You have all these prisoners. Eritrea is leading the pack in Africa with 23 journalists. It's not something that I'm proud of, but it's something that needs to be addressed. As more people are using the web platform to actually find a new means of expression, the number of journalists who are also going to prison for publishing media for content on the web is also increasing. So now these have just been journalists. Most of them have been journalists who are brave enough to actually tell you how they feel and write it. But what about the average citizen? What about that average farmer in the village in Nigeria who stands up against the corrupt town official who's demanding more tax revenue? What about that average citizen in Algeria who has the belief to say this is wrong? What avenue do they have? That avenue is within the concept of citizen media. Citizen media is anything that you and I all can create. So when I talk about citizen media, it's how citizen media in itself could be used as a platform for enabling speech. So examples of citizen media are the men and the women who, using their camcorders, took pictures in the subway bombing in London and actually uploaded it live to CNN. There's the UCLA student who watched a classmate get tasered and recorded and then uploaded to YouTube. Another example is the brutal beating of Rodney King by six armed police officers. True, this wasn't a mobile phone, but that image, that audio, or that recording made a difference in America today. So that is citizen media. It's the average citizen going and recording and sharing the content that they feel is important. There are platforms today that make use of this. Oman uses a Korean web platform that goes ahead and uses 50,000 citizens to go ahead and record any event and upload that event. When we talk about citizen media, it's made possible today by the broadband connections such as 3G, feature-rich mobile devices, and platforms that are existing. The 2 platforms that I have now are just 2, but there's so many more that are starting to grow. When you look at the overall statistics, you see that mobile phones are becoming more and more prevalent all throughout the world. And as they become more prevalent, they become more feature-rich. They become much more accessible to the average citizen all throughout. 59% of 2.4 billion mobile phones will be in developing countries. And by 2010, 88% of the world will be covered in 3G networks. So here you have an opportunity where people within developing nations all throughout the world now have a means to go ahead and let their voices be heard. But when they allow their voices to be heard, they open themselves up to retribution. That's where MobileVoices comes in. It allows people to do this anonymously, not having to fear. I chose Africa specifically beside the fact that it's my home continent because it's also one of the largest markets in terms of mobile growth. When you look at citizen media today in Africa, you do see examples of it occurring. You have an amateur video footage that was shot showing ballot stuffing and vote fraud in the 2000 referendum in Egypt. You have SMS, which is being used to bypass Zimbabwe's censor systems that have been set up so people can actually upload content or actually receive content. For the past, actually, also you have the Nigerian election where you have volunteers, voters themselves, who've been placed strategically in the last Nigerian election where they would actually go ahead and send an MMS message or actually place some sort of a phone call and let people know that this is transpiring. There's been ballot fraud occurring. There's also a huge issue in Uganda where a very close to like 300 acres of prime forest land was given away to a friend of the mayor's, and this local citizen were in an uproar because this was their forest. They used SMS messaging to actually cultivate a ground support and actually address this issue. One of the main issues is in protecting the anonymity of the users has been security. So in my research, I found out that there are secure SMS encryption methodologies to some issue. But interestingly, there's also other patents regarding the interception of the secure data. There's also the issue that I spoke to Professor Rosenthal about the use of triple DES encryption. And when you talk about encryption on a mobile phone, we're talking about most mobile phones don't have the battery capabilities to support encryption nor the software. So another format that I've come up with is in which, like, you would take you would take any media files that you would have, your recordings, your images, or your audio. You would gather 4 people who are also using MobileVoices, and you would actually upload it. You would share it within each other, and then upload it to the platform, which would then recompile it together and stream it off of each individual client. This way, you're using the networks that exist, but making the packages so small that they can't be intercepted. The implication concept that I have is you would do it with organizations, human rights organizations, that already have the resources, that have the means, and they already have the context to implement and to teach people how to use this. So you could do it either through the use of a group, or you would do it one-to-one using Bluetooth to pass the MobileVoices secure mobile application from person to person. And then when that person witnesses an event, any sort of event, they would be able to record it. Once they've recorded it, they would find other MobileVoices users. They would Bluetooth the smaller packets to each other, and then they would upload that video file or that audio file or that whatever content it is through the networks into MobileVoices, which would then recompile the audio image, recompile the media, and then broadcast it to the world. But at the same time, it would never actually store the media content on the server. It would be calling in each as it happens. So the web platform would then be used as a resource tool to actually share all this information with the world. I'm doing this in hopes that eventually, by raising these issues, you would let the world know. So all the media content that's eventually published would be used by either BBC, CNN, or other people who are interested in letting them know what is currently occurring. So the people who would use it, who would use MobileVoices, are your average mobile subscribers, human rights organizers, and student activists. The possible effects are, 1, the publication of media, letting people know of an event without putting yourself at risk, and allowing the people who suffer be the ones to tell the story, not outside people coming in to report it and leaving. And also distributing this all throughout without any form of interference from the government, which in most African countries actually have control over the mobile networks or influence. And a greater range. Imagine the stories that could be told if thousands and millions of people had the platform to anonymously upload media content. So an example of this, to test this idea, I went to New Orleans. I was part of the digital narrative storytelling a project at Xavier University, and I built out, with the help of Sean Van Avery, a WordPress account, which is an open source platform. And I was able, using his Perl code, to upload media files up to the website. And I also have some design concepts of how the site should look. And here's a student, one of the students, Mary Hill, who was telling me about her own personal adventures, her own story about what happened in Katrina. And these are just some mock-ups that I made in order to see how the platform would look. So overall, if you're interested in, I'd be more than happy to talk to you if you're more interested about this particular project. And I'd like to say thank you to everyone, including my parents, Red, all my friends who made this possible. I would not be here if it wasn't all for you. So thank you so much, and I hope if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them. I'd also like to say special thanks to Red for giving me the opportunity to be here as a fellow. My parents, my mom, my dad, Eric, all my classmates who I couldn't even write on the board. Thank you so much. These past 2 years have been an amazing opportunity. Thank you. So Red says, we expect great things from you. Wow, that's but no pressure. Yeah, no pressure, no. Not at all. Constant pressure. Thank you. Clay.
In countries where the local government also controls the mobile phone infrastructure, how do you keep the users of the phones safe, not just from decryption, but also signal intelligence? The message came in at this time of day, and we know when the photographs were.
I was hoping by sharing the media files smaller, you would bypass the point of origination to some degree. I mean, encryption has been the hardest part within this. And then there's so many, when you're depending on a network, when you're depending on a network that someone else has influence or control over, all you can do is, in hopes of making the media file smaller, in hopes that even if they're able to find some point of origination, some point of message delivery system, that they only get part of the message. That if you can go ahead and make the pieces as small as possible, then they can't possibly compile all the pieces. There's also this other concept of generating fake noise, so that as the smaller the media file size are smaller, the more artificial white noise that you create on the network, on the traffic on the network, it's harder for them to find. And there's this notion that I have within developing nations, what technical know-how, they do have technical know-how, but to what level will they go in order to find the point of origination? So I'm taking that point very carefully. But encryption has been an amazing thing to research. I mean, the last time I was up here and I was presenting before, my group, Professor Rosenthal raised his hand, and it was like, why did you use the weakest form of encryption? Because this is all new to me. I mean, I'm learning as I go. But understanding that people's lives are at risk would be one of the main reasons why MobileVoices would be an open source application. It's to give people the opportunity who have more experience in the technical know-how of encryption to actually contribute and actually build it. I believe the more active participation that you have from the community of developers, of users, you really can build something that would allow anonymity to occur.
Great.
Thank you. And any other questions? Oh, Megan.
I'm just curious how, and I know how the site will use itself,
True. Moderation is a very key question. I believe moderation through community involvement would be one of the main ways. Filtering, I mean, there are subjects that you don't want certain things to be put on, but the question is, it's a slippery slope. Once moderation begins, where does it end? So what you allow is for the community of users, very much like a Wikipedia-style format, you enable the community to decide what is either the truth of what is able to be put on, what is not able to be put on. You start with a test subject with a small group of users. And eventually, you would then, basically, moderation through community involvement, participation is the key.
How many organizations have you approached?
I've done,
The questions,
oh, sure.
people on the
Sure. The question was, how many organizations have I spoken to? I did an internship with Witness, which is a human rights organization dedicated to using video to showcase their sin. I was researching this overall concept for them for almost a semester with some classmates last semester. I've spoken to Ethan Zuckerman from MobileVoices. Clay actually introduced me to him, and Rebecca McCannon. I've also spoken to someone that, another person who is within the academia range. So there are some organizations that I've approached, but I do need to approach much more, a larger group of groups. Great.